What's up, guys? Welcome to Inside the 20. We're talking about football, and more football today.
Stop.
Seriously.
Stop.
We're seriously talking about a lot of football today. Okay, so first off, before I even get into anything like remotely close to my personal life, what am I talking about?
Nice.
No, I was gonna bring in something. I forget exactly what, but
This is your personal life.
it
You
really
have no life,
is.
bro.
Yeah, football is my life. Okay, Russell Wilson. This is like okay. Let's just go over the trade details. Denver trades Shelby Harris, an aging defensive lineman, Drew Lock, I mean, average
Greatest quarterback of all time.
good backup quarterback, uh, tight end Noah Fant, which is probably the most solid piece they're getting there player wise, and then a young tight end, and then 2 first-round picks, which I'm assuming it's not specific, but I'm assuming it's 22 and 23, so they'll have the ninth pick this year. 2 second-round picks, which I'm also assuming is 22, 23. Fifth-round pick. I don't know what year. It didn't They haven't specified the years yet. They probably haven't gone quite that in depth into it yet. And so that all went to Seattle for Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick. So a really, really big haul for Russell Wilson. First thoughts, Ryan. What were your first thoughts when you saw it? You were in school. I was
Bro,
here. I saw the tweet as soon as I was doing homework, and I saw the tweet, and I literally had a stroke. I was not. It was out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it. Today of all days. Today was Aaron Rodgers' day, and his parade got rained on, and it was really funny.
so
So,
happy about that.
yeah, I agree.
Okay, hey
Well,
Drew, I
we'll talk,
have. Hang on.
obviously we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers later. But first, let's talk about Russell Wilson because this is literally, I mean, this is the biggest thing that's happened today. This is quite possibly the biggest trade in NFL history. So, what were your first thoughts in school, seeing this trade and being like, "Oh my God, Russell Wilson just got traded"?
Well, I was walking in the hallway and I saw Payne, Seahawks fan. Just he was so angry, bro. And I'm like, I was so confused. And Mike is like, "Yo, bro, did you see what happened to the Seahawks?" I'm like, "No, what happened?" And I walk into history, get on my laptop, and I saw it. I didn't know what to say.
Unreal, unreal.
And the picks, by the way, are the ninth this year, 41st this year, 150 this year, a first next year, and a second next year.
So they specified it now.
It's on PFF, so I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah, they specified it now. So yeah, that would be official. And so first, before we go into like who made the right decision and who didn't, I want to look at these picks because these picks are very important to Seattle, who is actually like their draft capital was really lacking. Um, the number 9 pick this year gets really interesting now that Seattle's in the mix because that means likely no quarterback is taken at 9. If I was Seattle, I would not take a quarterback at 9. I would probably take someone like Tyler Linderbaum, or if Charles Cross slash highly unlikely Ike McQuanu are on the board, absolutely take them. Offensive line is definitely in need, but Linderbaum is probably the most likely. But what do you think, like number 9 this year? Because that's going to be really interesting to see now that the Seahawks have that pick. What direction should they go?
I mean, they could go really anywhere. Hang on, I was pulling up my mock because I was just going through it and seeing what the CPU would draft. It had George Karlaftis, but I know both of us do not like
Well,
Karlaftis
yeah, I think he's
as
an
much
overrated
as
prospect. I
yeah.
think he's an overrated prospect, and I don't think that's a fit at all for Seattle. I mean, they send Jamal Adams up to blitz, so they don't
Mhm.
really. I think they run a 4-3 anyways, or a 3-4.
Um, yeah. Hang on.
I think they run a 4-3 anyways
So
because you have Carlos Dunlap already. So I don't think Karloftis would. Or
top
no,
left.
I'm sorry. They run a 3-4, so I think they bring Dunlap off the edge, and obviously Karloftis is more of a 4-3 guy. So I don't think that that's the pick. But you also think of their receiving core is really good. So like the only thing you really need, obviously is quarterback. But I would not take quarterback in this class, and I think Seattle knows that. And then um, also offensive line, which this class is very deep in. So offensive line's my thing. I think whoever's best player available offensive line wise.
I don't think there's gonna be a top 3 offensive lineman on the board, but I mean,
Well,
Tyler
Linderbaum for sure.
Linderbaum could fall, but
I
I
mean,
think he
path
will. But
to 9, yeah, absolutely. I don't think any team in the
but
top. I mean, maybe Atlanta, but I would take Drake London if I was Atlanta. without Calvin Ridley.
I mean,
now, which
there's
we'll talk about
also
later,
a
too.
possibility that if they want to build through the draft, they can trade down from 9 and take a quarterback later
Absolutely.
in the first round.
Well,
So
or they could trade down and get not a quarter. I don't think you need a quarterback in this draft at all. I mean,
I mean,
I think if you're Seattle, you roll with Drew Lock and a maybe you know, a veteran guy to ride the bench. But I think Drew Lock can at least win you a game or two. He's really not that bad at as a backup, and also he fits Seattle's offense so much better than he did in Denver. They're going to use him a lot for his arm. You know, he's going to be doing a lot of downfield throws to Tyler Lockett. So I think he actually fits that offense better, but there is no way in the universe that he starts for them for the foreseeable future. Probably just this year. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. Is this the biggest trade in NFL history? I think so. I really can't think of any, at least in my time watching the NFL, that there's been a trade this big, and I really can't think of anything in the past that was this big. NFL definitely is more of a free agent sport. A lot of more like signature, a lot more extension than necessarily than the NBA and the MLB and the NHL. So I would say this is, and not a lot of, like a lot of trades like this big don't really happen in the NFL. So I would go ahead and say this is probably the biggest trade in NFL history. What do you think? From what you know,
I mean,
from what I
yeah.
know, like I'm saying, from what I know, this is the biggest trade in NFL history by far. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I'm
really
like
don't. Yeah.
from when I started watching football, I'd say it is because I've not really like. It's been maybe 3 years that I've been actually like paying attention to the NFL
Right, but
like
you
a
think of
lot.
like yeah, you think of like guys that have signed elsewhere. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady, Buccaneers, Peyton Manning signed with the Broncos, right? He didn't get traded. Um, a lot of those guys that left and eventually went to other places were free agency, not necessarily trade like this. This is a blockbuster trade. I've never experienced anything like this in my time watching football, and it's pretty neat to discuss it because it's going to be something that we discuss for the foreseeable future. It's going to be a big point. I mean, Matt Stafford last season was huge too, but like this is way bigger. I mean, Russell Wilson's a much better quarterback than Stafford. I mean, there's really no debate about that. Super Bowl winning quarterback. I'm not trying to disrespect him or anything, but obviously Wilson is still a top 5 quarterback in the league. I would argue. Um, and yes, Denver did sign Peyton Manning in free agency, so I just confirmed that. Now I want to ask you, who won the trade? On first glance, who won the trade?
I think it goes both ways, honestly.
I really think it's a win-win.
Mm-hmm. For both teams, because you got maybe how old's Russell Wilson? Like 20.
He's
No,
30.
wait,
He's
yeah,
32.
30. I don't know why I
3.
said 20. Yeah.
He's 33.
Actually, hang on. Yeah, he's 30. I don't know why I said 20.
Which is still not that old
you've
for a
got-
quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you still got a
You've
good
got
5, 6
maybe
years.
5 years in his prime, and
I really think it's
out of that, you gave up 2 first-round picks.
right.
Starting tight end.
Your starting tight
backup
end,
quarterback.
your backup quarterback, one of your defensive linemen, for a guy
And-
who's going to come in and instantly change your entire team. He's a leader. Not only is he an amazing quarterback and he's an amazing football player, he's a leader. He's a great person. I really like Russell Wilson as a person. I think he's a locker room guy. He's definitely going to change the direction of your locker room. Sure, he didn't really force his way out because he wasn't being like a crybaby about it or anything. He wasn't drawing the spotlight to him. He just, privately went about his business and said, I don't want to be here anymore. And sometimes things, relationships end. Things happen. It's been years since Seattle's even been close to the Super Bowl. Since that 2014 Super Bowl loss, 2015 Super Bowl loss, I forget exactly. I think it was 14. It's been since then that Seattle's even gotten near the Super Bowl. So I kind of sympathize with Russell Wilson because it's not on him; it's on the team that he's been surrounded with. The Legion of Boom has been there and gone, and I don't know. It just seems like Seattle really had um or Russell Wilson really had no other choice than to find somewhere else to be if he wanted to even contend in his career again. So, a change of scenery wasn't too bad, and he didn't go about it the way that Aaron Rodgers did, where he,
Hmm.
cried for a trade and then didn't end up wanting one in the first place. But I did hear that apparently he has a no trade clause, which Deshaun Watson does too. And I actually wanted to touch on something. It's not on the script, but I wanted to touch on something about Deshaun Watson later too, um, because apparently we might get some stuff about him on Friday. But he only wanted to go to Denver. It was his words. He only wanted to go to Denver. That was the only thing he would waive his trade clause for. And I couldn't think of. I think Denver, out of all the quarterback needy teams, had the most assets. Um, I think the Commanders had a deal in place. I think the Steelers probably had a deal in place. The Eagles probably had a deal in place of some kind. But Denver wins. Denver wins. Um, yeah. So now I ask you, is it time to rebuild in Seattle? I mean, you're losing Russell Wilson. That's a big part. But you still got guys. You still got Jamal Adams. You still got Quandre Diggs if you want to re-sign him. You still got your receiving duo. I mean, you still have players. You're really not. I mean, I think of it's interesting because they're looking like the Trailblazers, the Portland Trailblazers. A little different, obviously, but a team that had to decide this season: is it time to rebuild? Is it Ryan? Is it time to rebuild for Seattle?
It's time to rebuild. I think you and there's a certain way to go about this because
Absolutely.
I don't. It's hard to rebuild with a 70-year-old coach. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I think Pete Carroll's. I
And
think it's
it's at a point where you can't just fire Pete Carroll.
no. You can't.
He's gotta get over the fact that they're not going to be a winning team for another 5 years, and you've got to either trade some players, get more draft capital, build through the draft, develop those players, or you gotta leave. Gotta retire. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the team, is it time to, you know, is it time to trade your other pieces too? Is it time to trade Jamal Adams? Is it time to trade DK Metcalf? Is it time to just scrap the whole team and start from scratch? Or do you keep
I
those guys on your roster and hope that at one point they can help you get back to contention?
I
It's a
think you gotta restart. Gotta start over. And I've seen like you can get so much trade capital with from DK Metcalf and Jamal Adams. They've got so many pieces that can help them build through the draft. Which
right.
I don't know if that's something that they want to do or if they want to have a veteran
And
squad.
and
But
that's a good point because they've never been a team that you know, is amazing through the draft. I mean, sure, Russell Wilson was a third round pick, but they've never struck me as a team that's good at drafting. Like they've never. I mean, a lot of the guys that have been. Well, you know what? I'm gonna kick myself in the face because I didn't even think of. They drafted Richard Sherman in the fifth. They drafted um, Cam Chancellor in the second in the past, and I'm gonna immediately redact that statement and say I'm wrong. They can obviously draft. It's just a matter of will they. And I'm sure they're capable of doing so. It's going to be interesting to see how this rebuild looks, and if they choose not to trade their pieces, I think they should at least trade Jamal Adams. But if they choose to hold on to them, which they probably will, um, what's that going to look like? Because they just freed up a ton of cap space, and they are probably able to now re-sign Quandre Diggs because they didn't franchise tag him. They're able to do a lot. They have a lot of cap flexibility too, but my guess is they rebuilt through the draft. So now, one last thing I want to talk about with this trade. You look at the AFC West. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, and Russell Wilson. Is that the best? Is that not the best quarterback division in the entire NFL? That might be the best quarterback division I've ever seen.
it absolutely is.
You
It's
have,
not even a question, honestly. It's
dude,
insane.
you have three guys that could contend for MVP next year, and one guy that is a solid top 10, top 15 quarterback. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is the top 10 to 15. No, I'm just kidding. But
Top
Yeah,
32.
I mean, and change of scenery for Wilson. He could finally get over that hump of going 5 weeks and putting up MVP numbers and then fizzling out. Maybe this time he brings it with some consistency. So it'll be really really interesting how the AFC West looks. Now I don't think can we go ahead and say the Broncos are Super Bowl contenders, or do we have to kind of refrain from saying that until it's tough. It's tough
Mm-hmm.
because they were already like they have a good squad.
It's
They have a good
tough
squad.
because you're going into a new season with a new head coach, a new quarterback. You've just got to hope that they mesh together. But I've seen people calling them Super Bowl contenders. I'm not sold yet.
Okay. Okay. What about division winners? You think KC still got it?
Absolutely.
I agree. I agree. Well, that's it on the Russell Wilson trade. Crazy trade, and obviously, I think it'll be a talking point for me and Ryan for weeks to come. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be really, really interesting to see how this plays out in the regular season. That's going to mark consecutive seasons where we've had a pristine quarterback get traded. It's pretty wild. Now let's go ahead and move on to another big situation that happened yesterday. Calvin Ridley got suspended for at least a season for gambling, and I believe he bet $1,500 and lost some 11.1 million. How do you even do that? Like, how do you even lose that much money?
Because he lost his contract, he's not gonna get paid.
Is that what the
Yeah.
is that what it is? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, anyways, um, let me ask you: do you think Ridley was mistaken? Obviously, he was mistaken.
Yeah.
But you think, you know, players should be allowed to bet?
No.
Why?
There's just like you've seen the meme with Ridley, where like Ridley's throwing the game on purpose to make some money.
And
But like,
and he
there's players
probably
that
was.
will go to extreme lengths to make that happen, and with that, the league just becomes immoral. Sales go down. There's a reason they have that rule in place, and it's not gonna change at all.
Well, and I agree with that, but I do want to ask, like, and we talked about this off the air, obviously, but um, why did he get suspended for 1 season plus, and then guys like Ray Rice, guys like Adrian
Yeah,
Peterson, guys like Ezekiel Elliott are getting suspended for less than half a season for domestic
that's
violence?
that's
It's
what I find
unreal.
ridiculous.
It's unreal. It's not, and it's not a good look for a league that's trying to promote quality. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I feel like either you give Ridley that 6 or less game sentence, or you give those guys that are having domestic violence charges, you kick them out of the league. Like, I mean, I think that's like inexcusable. Um, from Roger Goodell and from the league as a whole. I really really think that that's something that needs to be looked at, especially now. And I hope they see the comments about it because I know they're out there. I hope Goodell sees the comments. Um, a lot of things Goodell needs to fix. And I think that he's going the right way about it sometimes, but then I see things like this, and I'm just astonished because a guy who was doing something like, sure, it's illegal, and sure, he should not be doing it by any means, but he's not doing any harm. I mean, he's doing harm to the morality of the league, but he's not doing any physical harm to other humans, as these guys that are abusing their partners are. And I just think that's like, I get that was, I mean, I get the Ray Rice thing was a good, what is that, 15, 20 years ago now. That's been a long time, but I get it was a long time ago, but you still, I mean, the fact that people look back at that and are like, wow, he got suspended for 2 games, and Ridley suspended for at least 17, at least. So it's just it's really really disappointing, and in a league that I love, it's really disappointing that you see things like this happen. Um, a league that's really pushing for equality, that's really just not getting there, not doing a good job of getting there. Obviously, racial equality is an important subject as well, but um, I don't know. I feel like this is just as important sometimes. So,
Yeah. One thing I did want to say is, if you're gonna do that, you've got to hide it better, bro. Bro used his real name and was caught so easily. You could have easily done that under anything else. I'm gonna
No,
be
I
honest with
agree.
you.
I agree. I agree. It
But
wasn't a good decision by Ridley. He didn't go about it the right way. Um, Shame on him too.
mhm.
I'm not out here like publicly condoning Ridley's actions. Like that was extremely knuckleheaded of him to do. And you could see, yeah, the memes of him like intentionally tanking the game. He probably was. I wouldn't. I mean, at that point, it makes sense. But um, to move on to another legal situation, let's talk about Deshaun Watson.
Oh my
Supposedly, he's supposed to have some sort of, I don't know legal stuff, but he's supposed to have some sort of like trial or something on Friday, or go to court or something. I don't know. Anyway, whatever that may be, that situation's kind of rough too. But if if it goes well for Deshaun, which supposedly his lawyer is thinking it will, that doesn't always play out well. But if it does, then supposedly he's going to get reinstated into the league in the coming days, which would be insane. And teams like Carolina, teams like Washington that hasn't had their guy yet, obviously Denver's got their guy, but are going to be able to grab Deshaun Watson. So I just want to share that tidbit of information with you guys that keep on the watch for Deshaun Watson. All right. Today was a very important day for the NFL. Also, not even just because of Russell Wilson, but also because it was the franchise tag deadline, and it was a really busy franchise tag deadline. I believe 8 players got tagged today. One of them, or I'll list them off for you. Bucks receiver Chris Godwin, Packers receiver Devontae Adams, Dolphins tight end Mike Gesicki, Browns tight end David Njoku, Jaguars tackle Cam Robinson, Cowboys tight end Dalton Schultz, and Chiefs tackle Orlando Brown, whom they traded for 1 season ago. A lot of these people deserved it. David Njoku makes 0 sense to me, but the Browns is the Browns. Obviously, the rest of these guys make a whole lot of sense. Cam Robinson's kind of interesting though. Just sign him. Thought Njoku should have walked though. Anyway, moving on to the guys that didn't get signed. Commanders guard Brandon Scherf, who played under the tag for like a good 3 seasons. Bears receiver Allen Robinson, that one's interesting. Saints free safety Marcus Williams, that makes sense. They don't have any cap space. Seattle free safety Quandre Diggs. And Harold Landry was on this list until he got signed just about an hour or 2 ago when we're filming this to a 5-year, $87.5 million deal. Mike Williams also got signed to a 3-year, $60 million deal. 2 wholly overpays. So, Ryan, let me ask you. Which of these franchise tags are you like, that makes a whole lot of sense because that team is trying to get a deal done eventually. That makes sense that they got franchise tagged. I can think of a few guys on here. What guys are you like come out to you and you think like that makes sense that they got franchise tagged? They'll make a deal later for sure.
Obviously, Godwin and Devontae both stick out a lot because they're
Absolutely.
both insane at their positions.
And a little thing about Godwin is apparently the Buccaneers tried to get a deal done by the deadline and it just didn't happen. So they just had to franchise tag him, but they definitely want to both sides definitely want to get a deal done. They just weren't able to. And I think it's the same way with Devontae Adams as well. They just couldn't reach an agreement on money. So that is they're eventually going to get signed to contract as well. Just 1 second. Ryan, what are some other people that you think you agree with that got tagged?
I do like the Mike Gesicki one, if I'm honest. The Dolphins really need that at the tight end position, and he feels it well. He played like a top 10, top 5 tight end this year. Another one, Dalton Schultz, I don't know. I don't know if he's the guy that you can count on for as many seasons as, let's say, Mike Gesicki. So Schultz, I don't see him as a top 5, top 7 tight end in the league.
Yeah,
Though he could prove me wrong, but
so
yeah.
You said the tags that you don't really understand are obviously Njoku. I don't even say that, but that doesn't make sense to me at all. And then Schultz.
Yeah, Schultz.
Schultz makes. Here's I can rally for a lot of these. I can rally for Godwin and Devontae, like I said. Gesicki makes a lot of sense. He's gonna want big money, and the Dolphins are gonna have to prepare for that. Excuse me. Jaguars, Cam Robinson doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Why they tagged him, just get a deal done. You have tons of cap space. Orlando Brown makes sense. Obviously, they're going to need to prepare to sign him as well. But with Schultz and Njoku, I can't defend Njoku because that makes zero sense. His production doesn't really, support it, and they should have just held on to their tag. But with Schultz, what really, really shocked me, I looked up his stats for this season, and let me read them to you because it took me by surprise that he had that much production, and he was really, really important to that offense. I see why they tagged him, and the cap number was only 10 million. So he had 78 catches for 808 yards and 8 touchdowns, which is pretty shocking. I actually wasn't expecting. That's a lot. It's a lot of production for a guy who you don't really think of as like a top 10 tight end or anything, but he definitely is by his numbers. He had some drops, but definitely be worked on, especially because you're losing supposedly Amari Cooper. So definitely makes some sense once you look at his numbers, and makes some sense once you look at the cap hit for that. But Njoku makes no sense.
I honestly, when you look at the Cowboys, they're a very tight end heavy option team. And looking at that, if you feed any tight end the ball, they're gonna get yards. That's what they're built for. They're built for catching the ball.
Sorry to cut you off. Big news, guys. While this is happening, Bobby Wagner just got released by the Seahawks. Wow, that's a huge move. I didn't even think about Bobby Wagner. So, like we were saying earlier, Seattle's definitely moving into the rebuild. That frees up about 16, 17 million for the Seahawks. They're definitely looking to make some moves upcoming. So definitely some big news. And like we said earlier, I think the Seahawks are definitely gonna look to rebuild now. That makes a lot of sense. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. What were you saying, Ryan, about the tight end?
I was just saying if you give any tight end the ball, they're gonna get yards.
Absolutely.
And to me, Schultz isn't a top 5.
No,
tight end, so.
Not five. I would say 10.
To franchise tag him and have him paid like a top 5 tight end, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you, who should have been tagged that wasn't? The guy that comes to mind for me is Quandre Diggs for the Seahawks. He's super young, and even after, because I had thought this out even after Russ got traded, is why? I mean, Quandre Diggs is a fairly young dude. He's 29, which is not that old for a Pro Bowl caliber safety. Doesn't get the franchise tag. Very interesting. I assume that they're probably going to work out a long-term deal, maybe a 3 or 4 year deal. But for a guy that's 29 years old and a guy that's got that much production for them, that it was kind of shocking that they didn't franchise tag him. So that's who I think that should have been tagged and wasn't. Scherf makes sense. Obviously, both sides wanted to move on. Robinson makes sense. Like I was telling you earlier, Ryan, I was saying I think part of the reason that Allen Robinson had such a down season was because he didn't want to play for the Bears, and he was forced under the franchise tag to play for them. And so he was like, well, I'm just not really going to try my hardest, which at the same time is kind of like questionable because he's, tanking his stock a little bit, even though everyone knows the potential Allen Robinson brings to the table. So don't really think he should have gotten tagged. Marcus Williams, obviously should have gotten tagged by the Saints, or at least re-signed by the Saints, but they can't really do it. So I kind of give them a pass on that one because they don't really have any cap room to do so.
Negative 80 million.
Yeah, right. But the other teams that held on to their tags, good. Should have held on to their tags.
Going to the Packers. The Packers tag later with Devontae Adams having
you don't agree with
no money. No. I'm saying they have no money. Yeah.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Like I was saying earlier, there's so much restructuring you can do. It's insane. And I think they're going to restructure Aaron's contract as well. I think that's what this was, is just spreading the money out further. So they'll eventually have to pay him big money, obviously. but not yet.
And then have literally no one in the next 2 years.
Oh yeah, and then you cut or trade Darius Smith, that frees up about 17, 18 million. So they'll definitely find a way. Now, free agency predictions. The new league year starts in about 8 days. It's about a week. I think it's a week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's been announced. There's been some stuff that's announced. I'll go ahead and tell you. This is some of the stuff that I've seen. Some of the bigger things I've seen. First of all, apparently J.C. Jackson and the Patriots will likely not come to a deal, and they'll likely let him walk and try to develop the guys they have. This is very interesting. J.C. Jackson, in my opinion, is probably the biggest free agent on the market this upcoming offseason. Allen Robinson will look to a new team in free agency as well. He's probably a top 3, top 5 free agent this offseason as well. Von Miller's been teasing a return to the Broncos. That's very interesting. He's an aging guy. Could definitely provide that team with some veteran guys in addition to Russell Wilson. Cowboys are trying to make a long-term deal with Michael Gallup. Chiefs and Eagles have expressed an interest in Juju Smith-Schuster. The Saints and Ravens have expressed interest in Tyrann Mathieu. DJ Chark is expected to be a very hot commodity, which is kind of a shocker. And then the Commanders are obsessed with finding a long-term answer at quarterback and will do whatever it takes, quote unquote.
Did you see the
what?
Seahawks thing? Where the football team gave a more enticing offer, but they wanted Russell Wilson to be out of the NFC, so they traded him to the Broncos instead. It's insane. They could have gotten a lot more from the football team than the Broncos, but just because they didn't want to have him. Yeah, it's crazy.
Makes sense. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to touch on, obviously, is probably the largest one, other than the J.C. Jackson thing, is Amari Cooper is set to be released. Now, he's probably going to be, other than J.C. Jackson, the hottest free agent on the market. But Ryan, I don't know if you've gave any thought to this, but kind of tell me some deals you think will happen. Give me 3 deals you think could happen this offseason. 3 deals. You don't have to give me any specifics in terms of money or anything. Just some like predictions on where people will go. Just some thrust predictions out there. I want to hear.
The only thing I've gave thought to is who I want on the Bears, but I do want Amari Cooper on the Bears. Don't see it happening.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Just don't have money. I know we want to build through the draft, but I like Bobby Wagner too. But hang on. You talk for a minute. I'm gonna pull something up. I'm gonna get it done.
Okay. Well, something I think will happen definitely is a Von Miller Broncos. I think we could definitely see that. They've got a lot of cap space. Russell Wilson, a lot of Russell Wilson's contract is actually being eaten up by the Seahawks. And so I want to say the Broncos are only taking on like 14, 15 million. It's pretty crazy. Maybe even less than that. So they're still going to have $30, $25 million in cap space to go out and sign Von Miller and sign some other free agents, some priority free agents in the coming weeks. And so that I think a Von Miller return could absolutely happen. I think that's one of the more surefire things. I think Odell Beckham most likely will return to the Rams. I know I'm coming up with some boring ones, but I've got some more interesting ones. I think if Odell Beckham return to the Rams, they'll find a way for him. Commanders, I think that I have reason to think that the Deshaun Watson situation gets cleared up. The Commanders are going to absolutely make a shot for him, and I think they could absolutely get him as well. But if not, then I could see them signing someone with some promise, like a Mitchell Trubisky or a Jameis Winston, guys that they feel like if they play their cards right could be their franchise guys. But they have to play their cards right. That's an underline. Michael Gallup definitely back to the Cowboys. I think that could definitely happen. Allen Robinson to the Colts, interesting one that I have been kind of stewing over. I think I had a free agency predictions thing going, and I had Allen Robinson to the Colts. I think it makes a whole ton of sense. I think you can even put Michael Pittman. I mean, he doesn't really have the speed for the slot, but I think that you could put him in the slot in some circumstances. You could even just put them both outside receivers. And I think that would be very interesting if Allen Robinson went there, maybe on a prove-it deal, a 1-year prove-it deal, an $18 million, $17 million deal, or even a lockup or $5 million or 5-year deal. He would be really interesting on the Colts. And J.C. Jackson, I really find it hard to believe that he would not return to the Patriots, but if he doesn't, something intriguing I was seeing is him and the Chargers have interest. If the Chargers were able to go out and sign J.C. Jackson, that would be unreal. I mean, you look at that defense. It's scary. Asante Samuel on one side. Cut Chris Harris. He's too old. J.C. Jackson on the other side. Derwin James. Joey Bosa. And their offense, too. I mean, that could be really, really scary. So, J.C. Jackson, the Chargers, is like the most interesting one that I'm thinking. What about you, Ryan? Do you have anything? You had something you wanted to pull up, right?
Yeah, wanted to throw one out there, just to be funny. But I don't think this is gonna happen, more or less. But I know Antonio Brown said he wanted to play for the Ravens, so if the Ravens want to make that happen, very possible. But there's just too much drama there. An interesting one that I think goes.
He wants to buy the Broncos.
Oh, I saw that. Another interesting one that I don't think it's talked about enough is Will Fuller. And yeah, Will Fuller I think can go anywhere. But two teams that I have in mind are either the Commanders, who are looking for a quarterback, or the Bills, just adding depth, or just
receiver. You mean?
More wide receivers. What did I say?
You said a quarterback. Will Fuller.
Did I really?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I'm tripping. We're good.
It's okay.
Don't worry.
Now, what about Amari Cooper? Will Amari Cooper find a new home?
I hope so. On the Bears.
Where? Well, I've heard Browns Patriots is where he wants. But obviously, it's all speculation. So.
It'll be whatever team gives him the most money.
Right. Okay. One last thing before we close up the podcast today. Aaron Rodgers duped us all. The master of deceit is staying in Green freaking Bay. Awful, 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 awful decision if they really, really signed him. Which apparently they didn't. According to Aaron Rodgers, they did not sign that 4-year, $200 million deal. Apparently, according to Aaron Rodgers, they did not sign the deal.
Yeah, it's going to be a 4-year, $400 million contract.
Right. But
it's ridiculous.
If it's anything more than what he's making now, it's an overpay. Because, don't get me wrong, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. Still an amazing quarterback. But for how much longer? Like, let's be honest.
I give him longer? maybe
he's
a
38.
year.
I get he's not Ben Roethlisberger, but he's still 38. He's got a good 2 years on him until he's 40. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Brady. He doesn't have the longevity as Brady does. So I think Green Bay made a mistake if they really signed him to that big of a contract. It is unreal. And I also think even if they give him a cap-friendly deal, they kind of made a mistake. I mean, you're going to have to rebuild eventually, and it's like a 99% chance that Rodgers isn't going to get them a Super Bowl in the next 2-3 years. Like, I'd be shocked with the same team. I'd be shocked. They can't win playoff games.
Especially having to pay him that much.
Especially having to pay him that much money.
Yeah.
Because then you got guys like Jair Alexander that are coming up on contract. End of their contract. You got young guys like that. Adrian Amos. So, I mean, Rashawn Gary. A lot of guys that are coming up on the end of their contracts that if you signed Aaron to that big of a deal, you're going to have no cap flexibility for the rest. I mean, obviously the cap's very flexible, but like if you have a guy signed for that much money, there's really no way around it. So, now, one last thing. Should the Packers cut or trade Zadarius Smith?
Are you asking me, like, should
they? Yeah.
Which one, or should they do one or the other?
You don't really get to decide. Here's why. You obviously absolutely want to trade him. That's like the number one thing you want to do is you want to trade him. You want to trade him. But usually, and this is going to happen with Amari Cooper too, if teams know he's going to hit the open market, they're like, okay, well, we'll just save our money. We don't want to pay him that money. we'll just wait till he hits the open market and have a bidding war. Now, obviously, you get the team occasionally that's like, I don't really want to do the bidding war. I'll just trade for him. But that's very occasional, and usually the return is pretty weak. So, like, obviously, last year with Julio Jones, the Titans made a trade for him, but it was a second-round pick at that for one of the best receivers to ever play the game. Here you're talking about Zadarius Smith, the dude who's going to, bring some veteran depth to your team. Not depth, but he'll start. But bring some veteran presence to your team. Be a solid player. Not one of the best. He's not one of the best edge rushers ever or anything. So, like, I really don't see his value being more than enough to warrant a trade, if that makes sense. But I'm asking you, should they make that move or should they hold on to him and just find a way?
They don't have a choice.
I don't really think they do either.
So much money, and like you said, you can reconstruct contracts all you want.
But it's just pushing the money out further.
It's $40 million. You're gonna no future. Same with the Saints.
Yeah, exactly.
It's embarrassing to say the least. I'm gonna be.
Kyrie had 50 points and went 9 for 12 on threes. All right, that's a good way to end the podcast with the guy that we started it all with Ethan, Kyrie Irving. We complained about Kyrie Irving and we got some backlash. It was pretty funny. All right, guys. Well, we had a lot of fun filming this episode. I know I talked a lot. There's a lot of information, but had to get that information out. Had to discuss a lot of this stuff. This stuff was on our minds, and obviously is NFL, for whatever reason, is the most important sport right now.
Always.
Today,
always.
Really, yeah, always. But today was definitely the most important sport. So we had to touch on some stuff. In the coming weeks, obviously, I know some of you guys are like football only, but then other guys are like, yeah, we like all the sports. So we're gonna touch on some hockey. Trade deadline's coming up. We'll touch on some basketball. So stay tuned. As always, we'll see you guys next week. Peace out.